What's going on, everybody? It's your boy Shuggy from Shook Earth Media, and today is a big day for Last of Us fans because the HBO television adaptation just premiered on HBO, and it's a very exciting episode for fans. I'm really excited for how it turned out. I'm feeling really positive about it right now, and we're going to break down the episode scene by scene. But if you guys are interested in zombie content, The Last of Us and Walking Dead and stuff like that, we definitely cover stuff like that on this channel. So hit the sub button and the like button. I hope to hear your opinions in the comment section down below. But with that, let's just break into the episode. So I won't be giving spoilers for the game and by proxy the show. That being said, of course, I'm assuming they're going to change things going forward. You know, it's not going to be the exact same story as the game. So I'm going to be comparing the two mediums, but I'm not going to be spoiling anything that hasn't been shown in this episode. So don't worry if you haven't played the game, you don't want spoilers. I won't be giving anything away there. So we start off the show with a teaser scene that really has nothing to do with the plot of the rest of the episode. It's a pretty interesting little scene here. I like getting the scientific perspective on it. You know, we have somebody explaining the fungus, you know, and they're talking about pandemics generally that they're worried about, you know, with flights and everything. Of course, we had a worldwide pandemic, trying to bring in that, you know, bring in the real world issue into the show. And you know, and then the scientist goes on to bring up, climate change might affect it. If the climate warms, then fungal infections might be extra dangerous. And, you know, I could have done without that. I'll be honest, I didn't need the climate change messaging, but you got the one little, like, activist thing thrown in there at the beginning, so we could get on with the story after that. So that's okay. But I actually kind of like the scene. I mean, it sounds good. They have plausible sounding science. It just kind of felt like the showrunner who ran Chernobyl just wanted to do a period piece scene in the 60s. So it's an interesting scene. I'm curious to see if, I don't know, maybe one of these characters comes back or this affects the plot somehow. I could have done without this scene. I'm not gonna lie. I think we could have had a stronger opening as far as a zombie show. Like, I would have rather led with the zombies and all that instead of having this scene. So that's just my opinion on it. It's an enjoyable scene, but I could have done without it. I did like this little intro here, you know, with the fungal infections and stuff and all that spreading. Now here we got a change from the games. They in the games, the outbreak took place in 2010, which is kind of funny because it's the exact same year The Walking Dead started their apocalypse on the AMC adaptation, and now they changed it back to 2003. So I think that was to obviously set it quote-unquote present day, because most of the show takes place 20 years later. So 2023, that's why they changed that. I think that's a minor change. Totally cool with that. No worries there. So yeah, I think this episode was, to me, surprisingly faithful. There was no, in terms of the games, it's very faithful to the games. They really haven't changed a lot. They kept some of the dialogue verbatim, word for word, and it plays off beautifully. I think Pedro Pascal, turns out I was skeptical of the casting. I'm gonna be honest with you guys. Joel, I think he pulled it off perfectly. There's times where, you know, I close my eyes and I swear it's Troy Baker talking. I think he nailed the voice. So yeah, so far I'm really impressed with Pedro Pascal in this episode. And of course we have his daughter Sarah here. So just a brief notice on the casting before we move on. It's not a huge deal to me. Like, I'm a person that can overlook this kind of thing. But I think in the case of having it's a brief scene with her, you know, obviously, spoiler alert, she gets killed off in the episode. So 30 minutes into it. So I would have rather had somebody who, by sight, you can tell, oh, that's his daughter. You know, I would have rather had a bit more of a resemblance to Pedro Pascal, especially because the mother isn't in the picture, in at least as far as the show is concerned, in the games as well. So I would have preferred just to have a bit more of that resemblance there. That being said, this young actress is very good at the role, and I think she nailed it as well. You know, the snarky kind of teenager vibe. That's what we're going with, and it's very true to the original Last of Us. You know, I'm seeing a lot of stuff where if The Last of Us came out today, I was thinking about this as I was replaying the game because I played it on my PlayStation 3, in preparation for the show coming out, I got the game back out, my PlayStation 3 back out, replayed it, and I was like, if this came out today, I would say some of these characters are a bit annoying, because we're a bit swamped with, strong female characters being a bit bratty and stuff like that, but it's realistic. It's realistic kids in a crazy situation like this, so, I like it. And here we got an addition. So we have no real changes, we just have additions. One of the additions I think was really smart was to have neighbors as characters so that we can do a spooky, zombie scene when we're getting in the suspense factor before the big reveal of what's going on with the apocalypse. We got to have the little bit of mystery with the zombies, and we do that with these neighbor characters. We have an elderly woman here who unfortunately gets infected. We got a nice guy that takes care of her, whether that's his, her husband or son or something. It's not exact. I don't really know that it's made clear 100%. But we got Tommy, of course, Joel's brother, introduced as well, and I think they nailed the casting on that too. So they really swayed me with the casting. I was skeptical of the Ellie casting as well, and I think she's nailing it too. So we'll get back to Ellie later in the episode. But this classroom scene, I thought it was a nice touch that we had. The sound kind of drop out. And if you're a fan of the game and you know what it sounds like with clickers and the zombies, if you know what that sounds like, the sound kind of drops out and you hear a little bit of sounds that sound like the zombies. So it's just getting that, basically for people who don't know that going in, you'll look back on that, or you might subconsciously think about hearing that sound before it being familiar. So that's cool. And we're adding in an extra scene here where we get to actually see Sarah get the watch repaired. This is from the games as well. She's getting Joel's watch repaired for his birthday present. And I like this scene too, because we're building that suspense. We're getting the idea that there's something wrong. Of course, we know that going into a zombie apocalypse thing, but I think it made sense to slow the pacing down for a TV show, whereas in the game, we were in the car within 2 minutes of the game starting, you know what I mean? Whereas here, we're taking our time a bit more. We're adding that suspense in. I think it's smart for TV. And, I like seeing the SWAT vans go by in the background and all that. So we got a fun kind of like jump scary-ish scene here where, she's looking through the DVDs back there, and we have the lady in the background doing the zombie thing. So we get our first zombie, and we get to see more of her later. So I think it was great to add the neighbors in, and have that extra suspense factor. So that's not in the game, but I think it's smart, and with the dog and everything, to have all these little hints and setups and payoffs. So I think it was smart. And then here we got the scene of Joel coming home from work as a construction worker. I don't know if that was in the original or not. I don't seem to remember that, but I think it's perfect for his character. It makes perfect sense to me that he would be a construction worker. And even they bring it up in dialogue later with Tess. So I like that element of his character as well. So this scene is verbatim from the games, like exact dialogue, down to her saying, "Oh yeah, I sell drugs and stuff." And that line was in the game originally because of course Joel later as a smuggler is dealing drugs as well. So tying all that in together, it's a funny scene. It bringing some of that levity in right before we get that warmth, the connection between them. They're watching the movie. She falls asleep, and then Tommy's gone to jail. We're getting hints of the zombie stuff, and then she wakes up to explosions. The news isn't broadcasting, but there's an emergency alert thing. Helicopters overhead. The dog's outside. She comes into the neighbors, and then she finds the friendly old man bit, and finds the culprit, the old lady who was doing the zombie thing later. Now we got this weird fungus stuff growing out of the mouth. I don't think that's from the source material. I'm not that into the fungus growing out of the mouth, but maybe that's just they added that in so that somebody who still looks fresh could come off as a zombie. What they did in the original, I think, is more like veins, like red veins and bulging eyes, and I don't remember fungus coming out of the mouth. The fungus was kind of like growing over the head and protruding out of the skin and stuff. So I don't know. I'm not that into it. Maybe they can sell me on it later when we see the rest of the design and how that works. I just don't see that as fitting in with like the clicker design that we saw in the trailer and stuff like that. So yeah, it's kind of cool having this little suspense scene come in before the car scene. This car scene is pretty much straight out of the games as well, like word for word, beat for beat, moment for moment. Like it's straight down to the camera angle because the game obviously takes place from the girl's perspective, and you can pan the camera back and forth, but you're locked in there. So that's kind of what the scene feels like, and you're seeing it through Sarah's perspective, which I think is great. And they even add in like she's crying when they leave the people on the side of the road. Really trying to get you to care for this character because she's about to, bite the dust, of course. So, and by the time the pacing is, of course, really picking up, and the game entry was so strong because this intro was like, wow, just so quick. I've never seen like a zombie apocalypse nailed so quickly. This show is a little bit less efficient. So, like I said, there's pros and cons to it. You get the suspense factor. You get a little bit. They could have easily cut all of that out, though, and we could have gotten more plot in this first episode. So, I don't know. I'm a bit torn on it. Do I like it better? Or I like that they're adding stuff and not really changing or taking away anything so far. So, I will say that I lean towards liking the fact that they added a little extra padding here at the beginning. A little bit extra suspense never hurt anybody. And we're not in a rush. So this scene with the soldier, yet again, perfect from the games, and Tommy comes in and saves the day last second. All this is beat for beat. They get separated from Tommy. The soldier catches up to them. Soldier gets commanded to shoot these potentially infected people because she's got a hurt ankle, and she gets shot and dies. And Pedro Pascal's performance here is amazing. You can see already that the watch that was just repaired is now broken again. And then we get the flash forward to 20 years later. And, here we got some more additions here. They do some more world building, which on one hand I think is really smart. We get a little bit more into the authoritarian rule of the people running this place. So I'm pretty okay with how this middle part works out. As a fan of the games, I was like felt like I was lost for a second, which I think is a good feeling because that's what you want when you do a time jump. And even though I've seen it before in a way, having something new here makes sense. We have this kid who I'm guessing was infected, got bit somewhere, and the guards outside the gate at the quarantine zone take her in, and then they scan her and investigate, and turns out that she's sick. And my only question with this, and of course we're getting a sense of the brutality in one way because they just put her down right away, but she's trying to put on a brave face and be nice to the girl. And it feels wrong though, right? Like they're just putting her down, but maybe that is on one hand the right thing to do with this crazy situation like this. However, I will say, like, I don't know how they're doing the spreading of the virus or the fungus differently than in the games. They said they're not doing spores, which I like the spores because it reinforces the fungal aspect, but we're not doing spores in this one. Whatever, we can move on past that. But quarantine zone, this doesn't look very quarantined to me. We're like right next to each other, breathing on each other. This kid is infected. I don't know how that happens. Is it only through bites? Is that the only way you get infected? Bites and scratches? Is that the only way that the bite is transferred, or that the fungus is transferred? Or is it like airborne, or what is it? If it's airborne, this is not a good quarantine at all. So, of course, we're tugging on the heartstrings. Little girl and the life of the little girl, it shows the authority might be questionable. So I think that's important. And we're burning body is showing the brutality of this world. The Last of Us universe is kind of interesting because it's not like The Walking Dead where a switch flips and then society is collapsed. There's a bit of a structure. There's martial law going on. There's military left over. There's people in charge. There's a bit of a structure there. So I would be interested in getting a little bit more of the backstory there, because that stuff is kind of in the background in the games. We get a bit more info about that. That'd be pretty cool. So I thought that it reintroducing Joel here was pretty cool, burning bodies, and they have him burn a kid again. This moment to me, like, I get what they were going for. It just felt like so quick to me. It just didn't have the impact I think it could have if it happened later, or if we took this moment, had more time. Something just about this, it just felt a little too quick for me to have that real emotional resonance. Of course, when he's carrying the girl, you're thinking about Sarah. But like, that just happened a couple minutes ago for us, like the viewers. So it just doesn't have that impact. But I like the decorations we got in the backgrounds. We got the rewards, wanted posters over here. We got the lines waiting for ration cards. And we get actually a look. This is kind of new. We get to see the brutal consequences of either entering or exiting the quarantine zone without authorization. So this was not in the games, or it was in the games in terms of dialogue, but it wasn't in the games in terms of we saw it happen. I think this is a great addition. It's a really simple scene to add in. I think it was really smart to add it in, because we get to see there are stakes involved when we are moving about. It doesn't really feel quite as high stakes as it should in the game, in the source material. So that's something they can change and fix a little bit. Even though the source material is amazing, there's always little things you can add in and fix and stuff. And then we got I like that we bring this soldier back later in the episode. I think that was really smart. And Joel doing his smuggling thing, dealing with drugs, and I like the discussions about where it's being manufactured and whatnot, and just getting a bit of a glimpse into the wider world, which I think is cool. And here we got a scene that plays out a little bit differently than it does in the games, which I think is interesting. Introducing Tess this way, she just got beat up, but she's still like somehow in charge of the situation. I like this introduction, and I think again, in some lines are like word for word. But in the games, I'm pretty sure she and Joel end up killing him. They don't do that in this one because they want them to be more sympathetic, which I think is smart again. But it just coincidentally, something explodes nearby. So I was kind of confused what was going on with the explosion. So I don't, and then there's like a shootout going on. This is cool because there's the Firefly War going on. I suppose that's what the explosion is too. It just felt a little coincidental, and I felt, like it could have been set up a little bit more, but, it's a minor complaint at the end of the day. And here we get our first scene with Ellie, and I like the tone of the actress that they have here playing Ellie. I was skeptical at first in the trailers and stuff. I was like, she's not emoting enough. In this episode, she is. She is the perfect encapsulation of the energy of Ellie at the beginning of the games, where she's the annoying bratty teenager. That's the character. So that's where we're starting with. But this is an interesting twist because they have her like chained up and stuff. And I'm not gonna say why they have her chained up for people who might not know. But in the games, it wasn't like that. Ellie was chummy with Marlene, and they were friends and stuff. So they're adding a bit more conflict in. And I like the idea. It just feels a bit rushed because we don't really, at the end of the episode, obviously, Marlene's handing Ellie off. So it feels a bit premature, I suppose would be the word. It just feels rushed, I guess. We don't get to see that conflict play out. It's, I would have preferred her to just think positively of the Fireflies, but, maybe it'll make sense later. And all of that. So, and then Joel comes in and visits this guy who has some information about where Tommy went. Now, I'm not really sure who this guy is. I think he's just dealing with radios or something. But there's a bunch of people in line outside the door. This is another part where it's like, I'm curious about it. And maybe if I rewatch the episode, it'll make a lot more sense. But I was just like, I was again like trying to catch up with it. Like, what who is this guy? What's going on with this? Maybe somebody in the comment section, if you have any idea who this guy is or what he is up to, let me know. But then he comes home and he gets drunk and takes some pills, and he gets out a map and all that. And this is kind of straight out of the games too. And then Tess comes home, and then Tess tells him about what happened. She got jumped. It seemed like she was trying to lie to him at first and then changed her mind about it, which is kind of interesting. And then we get introduced to Marlene, and this is one part I might criticize a little bit because, of course, at this point in the story, the Fireflies are getting defeated a lot. And I would have almost liked to see maybe a bit more behind the scenes. I like that we're getting in Marlene's head, seeing the state of the war and stuff. Get a little bit more in the Fireflies' mind, even though that's not really where our story is, though. So maybe that's a bit of a distraction. But I don't know. Her energy to me came off a little bit too bitchy. I don't know, bit too. I don't know what the right word is. But I like her being bossy and like saying everybody's got to follow orders and stuff, because that's how a war situation is. That's how an army is. But just I don't know, her just tone just didn't quite feel right. She had a bit more heart originally. But yeah, so I like getting a bit of that bigger picture view of what's going on with everything, and the debate about the girl and stuff. And she tells her they share the secret, but they leave it hanging for the audience. Of course, I think most of us know, but anybody who hasn't played the games, maybe they don't. And I would hope not, because it's a cool little twist and surprise. I like this scene with Joel here, where he's waiting for Tess, and then this guy from the Fireflies tries to like recruit him, and he's not having it. I like that a lot. Here we got a scene with Marlene, and here we're hinting at, it seems like they kind of sped the timeline up a little bit, in the sense of like, from the time that Ellie knew Marlene to the time that she's with Joel. It feels like she's just meeting Marlene for like the first or second time, whereas they were friends in the source material. So, it's not really worth breaking down too much, but we get some hints of the past and what happened. Without revealing too much, And I guess I could have done without that scene. I guess I could have done without it. But it's not a bad scene. I really like the design of this zombie here. And here is where we will get into. So they're not doing the spores with this show. Whereas in the game, they had to wear gas masks to prevent breathing in spores in places where dead bodies were. I prefer having the gas masks and the spores and the particles in the air. I think that's a lot more cinematic. I think that fits in with the fungal aspect. And I think the showrunner's overthinking it by saying, oh, it would just be airborne. And I don't know. I've never heard anybody nitpick that aspect of it. So I miss having the gas masks and stuff. And now it just it doesn't feel special that it's a fungus, because it almost feels tangential to everything. The fact that it doesn't have anything to do with the spread. But, we've harped on about that enough already in this review. So we're back again following the battery. They've been tracking a deal. Basically, they had a deal to buy a battery they were going to use to get a vehicle to find Tommy. But the battery was sold before they were able to get to it. And the guys just took their money and ran with the battery, and now they found the battery, and it's a piece of crap anyways. And then we run into Marlene, and this is the deal between Marlene and Joel to basically you treat Ellie as cargo. Of course, they add in a little aspect where Ellie's using a fake name, Veronica, and again, that just seems like unnecessary. I don't understand why that has to be in there too. It just seems like a complicating it for no particular reason. But it doesn't really matter at the end of the day. I like the tension between Ellie and Joel to begin with. I think the actors nailed it. They don't trust each other at all. We're thrust into the situation unwillingly. Nobody really is happy with the situation. That's important building blocks for this relationship that blossoms into something important. If you don't start with that aspect, it doesn't feel the same. It doesn't have the same payoff towards the end. So yeah, that's pretty much the end of the episode. We get a scene here. I like this scene where this is another scene directly from the source material where Tess is going to go check out the guns, and Joel is waiting, and they pretty much use the dialogue from the games, but they add this aspect where Ellie rather, pretty much cracks Joel's radio code, like depending on which song plays on the radio. I guess maybe that's to do with the guy that Joel met with that was dealing with radios and stuff. Maybe he plays a specific song. It means a message from Tommy. I need to rewatch that part to really get that. But she cracks the code, and that's cool because I like to see that she's smart and stuff. And in addition to, you know, her personality being the bratty teenager and stuff. And of course, she points out that the watch is broken. And then we're doing a smuggling scene, leaving the quarantine zone, and we're in a tunnel. And I like the sound design in the show, by the way. The rain falling from the sky and the drips on the metal. It sounds really good in this part. And we get caught by the soldier that we met earlier. I think it was smart to have us meet the soldier earlier so that we sympathize with him a bit. And, you know, Ellie gets she stabs the guard. This is a scene directly from the source material and whatnot. I do feel like this scene was maybe rushed a little bit. It could have been a lot more suspenseful if we slowed it down a bit. But it felt a little kind of rushed for the end of the episode. And then they reference a song earlier, the code that they cracked that means that there's danger. So that's the song that plays here at the end, and that plays us out into the credits. So overall, I really liked this episode. I think it looks great. The show has good effects so far. Good casting and acting and writing and everything's so far living up to the source material. It's very faithful so far. So I'm impressed so far. I will say, having just played the game and now playing the show, there were parts of the game where it's almost like the game was more cinematic than the show is. It feels like the show is going for a bit more of a gritty handheld kind of style, Walking Dead style, and that's great. But I almost feel like the game is a bit more cinematic at this point. But that's kind of ironic. But anyways, I'm enjoying the show, guys. I hope to hear what you have to say about the show in the comment section down below. And with that, it's been your boy Shuggy. Definitely subscribe for the next review, and I'll see you guys with the next one. Thanks for watching, everybody. Peace out.